Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
We have fantastic guests like KT McFarland, former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump, and also author of the book Revolution. Okay, KT, good morning. Good to talk with you.
It's always good to be with you.
So we had this extraordinary drone attack on Russian bombers on Russian soil, which, by the way, if Russia is true to their own internal doctrines, that sort of triggers a hell of a retaliation because those bombers are part of their nuclear triad. And Vladimir Putin, of course, seems to be incredibly defiant based on Trump's readout of his own phone call with the president of Russia. Things look worse now, KT, than they did a couple of months ago with regard to this war.
Yeah, because Vladimir Putin, who I really didn't want to have a peace agreement until at least the end of the summer, because he thinks he's going to make great advances in a summer offensive. So he really doesn't have any incentive to settle now. Zelensky may have had an incentive to settle now, but he has less of an incentive to settle now because of their successful attack. But the odd thing is, it now makes peace much less likely. And as you point out, Vladimir Putin has got to respond, not because of the politics of the war, but now we're talking about the politics of Russia. You know, yeah. Putin, it's not lost on Putin that the reason he came to power 25 years ago was because Boris Yeltsin could not quell the insurrection in Chechnya. Putin came in, killed all the Chechens, leveled the cities, and has been in charge ever since. So he knows that if he is perceived as weak, he's not going to be long in that job.
Do you believe, or do you have knowledge that the United States national security or State Department apparatus were informed of this drone attack by the Ukrainians before it occurred? I mean, let me rephrase the question. If they didn't, shouldn't they have, considering they were utilizing American arms and technology to carry it out?
You know, that's a question that everybody's asking. What did they know? Who knew it? What did they know, and who knew it when? Given President Trump's response, I can't imagine President Trump knew it. And he does, you know, and President Trump is what you see is what you get. He's very straightforward and very honest about, he doesn't sort of fabricate this stuff. He doesn't pretend. He doesn't do political correctness. And I would think that also means that his top advisors did not know. Does that mean nobody in the U.S. knew? You know, this is a planned attack that's been planned a year and a half, well before President Trump took the oath of office a second time. So are there people who were left over from the Biden administration who were informed of this, who are still in the Defense Department or the intelligence community? That's the question I want to know, because then I get really upset thinking, wait a minute, is this the deep state again? Is this people who are acting without the knowledge of the president, or perhaps, you know, deliberately withholding information from the president? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not, but it's certainly worth investigating.
Yeah.
You know, KT, when I think for lay people like myself, when we saw this attack, this felt like a new line had been crossed, and broadening it beyond Russia and Ukraine, it thought, is this a new threat for the United States? That something like that could happen here? Is that a concern? And what do you know from the defense industry and the Pentagon of how this is being mitigated so that we can't see copycat-like attacks, just broadening this from what's happening over in Ukraine and Russia?
You know, Cassie, that's the key question. How vulnerable are we?
Yeah.
Now, this is Russia, which is a surveillance state where they have an intelligence operation which is supposed to catch all these kind of things. And yet it's been planned for, you know, over a year. They didn't see any evidence of it coming. They supposedly have pretty good intelligence about what's going on in Ukraine, and they didn't see it coming. And you think about the United States. You know, you just think, how many months ago was it where the drone swarms were over New Jersey? Yeah. I'm a New Yorker, so the drone swarms over New Jersey got people really kind of excited, especially people who looked up in the sky and, you know, right above the treetops, saw drones right above their own homes. So I think what it shows is, we are so open to this. We are so vulnerable about this. And what I really hope, when President Trump had said several months ago, we're going to find out what those drone things were, and we're going to get to the bottom of it, because it's not hobbyists. Mm-hmm. Is it another country? We don't know. But That to me is a real wake-up call when you add those two things together. This is what happened in Russia with drones. This is what has happened in the United States. What if those drone swarms over New Jersey were carrying weapons?
Yeah, we're speaking with KT McFarland. KT, the talks with Iran right now, we know that President Trump wants to make deals, and he believes that he can make deals with anyone on the planet. Everyone's looking for a deal. Iran doesn't want a deal. They want to kill their enemies. They want to kill their perceived enemies, Israel and the United States. And it looks like, from my perspective, they're just delaying these talks long enough for them to be able to ramp up their operation and obtain that nuclear weapon. Please tell me I'm wrong, because that's what it seems like.
No, you're right.
Like.
I mean, they're playing. They're playing for time. They're playing out the clock. There are three things you need to have a nuclear weapon. You need enriched uranium, which we know they're doing. Who knows? They probably have enough for 1, 2, 3, 4. You need a missile to deliver the weapon. They've got that. They've tested those. They do they have the blueprint? And the blueprint is sort of how you pull it all together. You don't just put uranium on a missile and boom. You need to have the very complicated, and this is the most difficult part of it, is the blueprint to pull it all together. We don't know where they are. We don't think they're years away from it. Maybe they're not a week away from it, but they're in the zone. So what is President Trump's leverage? I think that if you look at Russia, if you look at Gaza, Russia, Ukraine, Gaza, Iran, those are the three conundrums, right? Everybody's tapping him along. Everybody's playing for time. Everybody's kind of stringing him along. I think of all the ones that are the complicated, and they're all complicated, I think the one that might be the lowest hanging of the not very low hanging fruit would be Iran. Why? Because we can crush their economy very quickly.
All right, we got to leave it there, sadly, because we always love talking with you, KT McFarland, but it's always good to have you on and make us all smarter at the end of the conversation.
Sorry, it's not happier news.
Well, no, it's a complicated world right now. It is. Thank you, KT.
Yeah, sure.